The subway rattled along the tracks, its metal body shaking slightly with each turn. The car was crowded, but not uncomfortably so. People clutched the poles and straps, lost in their own worlds. Some stared at their phones. Others had earbuds in, listening to music or podcasts, while a few quietly talked with friends. Among them, a man moved nervously, his eyes scanning the car with suspicion. His hands gripped a backpack tightly, and he muttered to himself under his breath. Something about his presence made the air tense, but most people didn't notice. The young woman standing near the doors had been quietly holding on, trying to keep her balance as the train swayed. She had a book in her bag, and her headphones were on, playing soft music. She had no idea of the danger that was about to approach. In a sudden, shocking movement, the nervous man lunged toward her. Her eyes widened, and her hands instinctively tried to push him away. The backpack swung violently, hitting her shoulder as she stumbled back. Panic rippled through the car, and people started to notice. Some froze, unsure what to do, while others instinctively tried to create distance. The man's intentions were clear, and the young woman struggled to defend herself. Her cries for help were small at first, almost drowned by the sound of the train, but then they became louder. Her fear was palpable, and for a moment the whole car seemed to hold its breath. No one dared move too close. The situation escalated quickly, and it seemed like the attack might go unchecked. Everyone felt the weight of the moment, the helplessness that comes when danger suddenly appears in an ordinary place. From the other end of the car, a presence entered that changed everything. People began to notice a tall, muscular man moving toward the chaos with calm, measured steps. His face was familiar to many, and whispers spread through the crowd. It was Dwayne Johnson. His towering frame and confident posture made it immediately clear that he was in control even without saying a word. He had been traveling on the subway, enjoying the normalcy of the ride after a public appearance, when the sudden cry of the young woman reached him. Dwayne didn't hesitate. He moved quickly but calmly, weaving through the crowd without causing panic. Passengers instinctively gave him space, sensing that someone extraordinary was intervening. His eyes locked on the attacker, who had frozen mid-action, clearly not expecting anyone to step in. The man had planned to intimidate and overwhelm, but he hadn't accounted for someone like Dwayne Johnson stepping directly into the path. The young woman, still shaking, felt a sense of relief as the man between her and the attacker grew larger and more imposing with each step. Dwayne didn't shout or threaten immediately. He simply positioned himself strategically, his presence alone acting as a shield. His calm, focused energy seemed to ripple through the subway car, making the attacker hesitate. In that moment, the young woman could finally breathe, her fear slightly easing. Passengers began to murmur quietly among themselves, some capturing small snippets on their phones, though most were too stunned to move. It was a surreal moment. The ordinary chaos of a subway ride suddenly transformed into something cinematic. People had been used to seeing celebrities on screens, but seeing someone act decisively and courageously in real life created a mix of awe and relief. The crowd watched, frozen yet inspired. The attacker, now clearly losing confidence, tried to regain control, but every movement he made seemed slower, more uncertain. Dwayne's steady, unwavering presence made it clear that any aggressive move would fail. The young woman, trembling, instinctively moved slightly closer to him, feeling the invisible barrier of safety that he created. For the first time since the attack began, she felt a small spark of hope. Dwayne spoke calmly but with authority, using simple words that cut through the tension. He instructed the attacker to stop, to release the bag, and to step back. Each word was deliberate, designed to prevent panic while asserting control. The man's eyes widened further, realizing he had underestimated the situation entirely. He hadn't planned for resistance, let alone a response so confident and immediate. In the background, other passengers started to react, some whispering reassurances to each other, others inching away from the immediate danger. The young woman's fear slowly turned into cautious relief, and she started to regain her composure. She could feel the strength and focus emanating from Dwayne, a reminder that someone had stepped in when no one else could. The ordinary subway ride had transformed into a moment of unexpected courage, and everyone on the train felt its impact. Dwayne maintained his position, ensuring the attacker had no escape or opportunity to cause harm. The train continued its journey, but the car's energy had shifted entirely. Fear had been replaced by awe and a strange sense of calm. People started to realize that the intervention had prevented what could have been a serious situation. The young woman, still trembling, began to feel safe enough to whisper a thank you, even though she was aware he might not respond publicly. His actions spoke louder than words. As the next station approached, Dwayne subtly guided the situation, making sure the attacker remained contained until subway security and emergency responders could arrive. The attacker's plan had collapsed completely, leaving him bewildered and powerless. Passengers who had initially frozen in fear now started to murmur among themselves, acknowledging the extraordinary courage they had just witnessed. Some tried to record small moments, others simply watched in disbelief. It was a rare instance where ordinary people witnessed a profound act of bravery up close. The young woman, finally able to steady herself, looked at Dwayne with a mixture of gratitude and awe. He nodded slightly, acknowledging her relief, but without making a show of it. He remained focused on the larger situation, ensuring no further danger emerged. The presence of someone willing to intervene so decisively and calmly transformed the mood in the car entirely. Panic had turned into cautious relief, and fear had been replaced by the quiet realization that courage can appear when it is needed most. Other passengers began to regain control over their own panic, encouraged by the calm authority displayed by Dwayne. Even those who had initially frozen found themselves taking a deep breath, reassured by the simple fact that someone capable had acted. The energy in the subway car shifted from chaos to cautious order, all because one person chose to step forward when it mattered the most. By the time the train arrived at the Sens, the train came to a full stop at the next station. The energy inside the subway car was tense but no longer chaotic. Passengers began to slowly process what had just happened. The young woman, still clutching her bag, leaned slightly against a pole for support. Her hands trembled and her breathing was uneven, but there was a sense of relief in her eyes. She had survived the frightening moments thanks to the intervention of the towering figure, who had appeared almost out of nowhere. The man who had tried to attack her remained pinned and subdued, clearly overwhelmed by what had just occurred. Dwayne Johnson stayed close, making sure the young woman was safe and calm. He spoke softly, asking if she was all right and if she needed any immediate help. His presence was calming, and the way he carried himself reassured her that everything was under control. She managed to nod, her voice weak but grateful, expressing a quiet thanks that reflected the depth of her relief. Around them, passengers began to stir, murmuring among themselves, discussing the attack and the sudden hero who had prevented it. People shared short sentences of disbelief and admiration, trying to understand what had just happened. Subway security arrived quickly. Uniformed officers entered the car, immediately assessing the situation. They guided the attacker out of the train and restrained him further to ensure he could not act aggressively. Witnesses were asked to remain calm and give statements, though most were still too stunned to speak clearly. Dwayne remained near the young woman, offering reassurance and helping the officers understand the sequence of events from the perspective of someone who had stepped in to prevent harm. People began to reflect on their reactions during the incident. Some admitted that they had frozen, unsure what to do in the split seconds when danger appeared. Others had instinctively moved away, creating space for the attacker to act. The intervention by Dwayne highlighted the difference that one person willing to act can make in moments of crisis. His calm and decisive response contrasted sharply with the panic and confusion that had initially filled the car. The young woman, still shaking, found a quiet corner of the car as Dwayne encouraged her to stay near him while the authorities managed the attacker. She realized the gravity of what had almost happened. Fear had surged through her so strongly that she could still feel the echo of it in her chest. Yet the presence of someone strong and attentive, someone who had acted without hesitation, gave her a new sense of safety. She began to regain some composure, slowly adjusting her grip on the bag she had been holding so tightly. Commuters began sharing details of what they had seen. A few took out their phones and showed shaky videos of the moments leading up to the intervention. Everyone agreed that the situation had escalated quickly, faster than anyone could have anticipated. The discussions were filled with admiration for the person who had stepped forward, and for the young woman's courage in standing her ground despite the fear she felt. Even strangers who had only been witnesses felt a sense of pride in the collective calm and support that had emerged after the initial panic. Dwayne's calm guidance continued as security handled the situation. He remained focused on the young woman, making sure she did not feel abandoned or alone in the aftermath of the attack. He asked simple, clear questions to keep her grounded, reminding her that the danger had passed and that she was safe now. His demeanor was steady and authoritative, yet kind, striking a balance that helped both the young woman and other passengers feel secure. People around them began to notice how ordinary courage and calm authority could change the dynamic of an otherwise frightening event. The young woman, slowly recovering, began to describe what had happened to the security officers. Her voice was shaky at first, but as she recounted the events, she began to feel more in control. Dwayne listened carefully, occasionally nodding to show he understood and offered support when necessary. The officers took detailed notes, ensuring that the attack would be properly documented and that the young woman's account would be accurately recorded. This process, though routine for the authorities, was comforting to her because it confirmed that the situation was being handled responsibly. Passengers continued to process the event. Some discussed how quickly the intervention had occurred, noting that it seemed almost cinematic in nature. They spoke of how the fear had gripped them in seconds and how the calm and confident presence of someone willing to act had shifted the entire mood of the subway car. The young woman, listening to these discussions, realized that the incident had not only been terrifying, but had also brought out moments of courage and humanity among complete strangers. People had been willing to give space, to step aside, and to allow the intervention to succeed without interference. It was a rare moment of collective understanding in a public space. As emergency responders arrived, Dwayne remained discreet, yet supportive. He did not seek attention or applause. His focus was on the young woman and ensuring that the situation was resolved safely. He gently reminded her to take deep breaths and reassured her that she had handled the situation as best as she could under the circumstances. His words were simple but effective, helping her feel a sense of calm and control that had been absent just moments before. The ordinary rhythm of the subway ride began to return, but the impact of the incident lingered in the minds of everyone present. The attacker, now fully restrained and under the supervision of law enforcement, could no longer pose a threat. His confidence had been completely shattered by the intervention, and he appeared bewildered and uncertain. For a few moments there was silence, broken only by the soft murmurs of passengers processing what had just occurred. The young woman, feeling the first real sense of safety, whispered a quiet thanks again, acknowledging the courage that had saved her. It was a reminder to everyone in the car that one person's decisive action can prevent serious harm. Dwayne helped guide the young woman and others to stay calm, while officers continued their work. He reminded people to take care of themselves, to breathe, and to support one another. His presence served as both a literal and symbolic anchor in a situation that could have easily descended into chaos. The passengers, now more settled, began to share brief conversations, their voices tinged with relief and awe. It became clear that the incident would remain with them for a long time, a story of unexpected heroism in an everyday setting. The young woman, slowly regaining composure, began to realize that fear had been intense but temporary. She had faced a real threat, and yet someone had stepped in to ensure her safety. The experience left a lasting impression, not just because of the danger, but because of the humanity displayed in the moments that followed. It reminded her of the importance of remaining aware, of trusting in the kindness and courage of strangers, and of the impact one person can have in preventing harm. As the train continued its journey, Dwayne stayed quietly supportive, checking in periodically to make sure the young woman felt safe. Other passengers began to return to their routines, though the memory of the incident remained vivid. The atmosphere, once tense and fearful, had shifted to one of calm and reflection. Everyone in the car shared an unspoken understanding. They had witnessed courage and humanity in its purest form, and it had changed the ordinary subway ride into so. The days following the subway attack were filled with mixed emotions for the young woman and the passengers who had witnessed the events. While life returned to its usual rhythm for many, the memory of that terrifying moment lingered in their minds. The young woman could not stop thinking about how close she had come to being seriously harmed, and how quickly someone had appeared to protect her. She found herself replaying the moments over and over, recognizing the split seconds that had determined the outcome. Her fear was still present, but it was tempered by a deep gratitude and admiration for the courage that had intervened. Social media began buzzing with stories of the incident. Eyewitnesses shared their accounts and the small clips they had captured, and soon the story spread far beyond the subway car. People marveled at how the attack had been stopped in seconds by a man who had acted decisively and calmly. The videos, though brief and shaky, captured the essence of courage in action. Comments poured in from strangers expressing shock, admiration, and support for the young woman and the passengers who had witnessed the act of bravery. News outlets picked up the story as well, highlighting the rare moment of heroism that had unfolded on an ordinary subway ride. They focused on how quickly the attacker had been neutralized and how the intervention had prevented a tragedy. The story resonated widely because it combined fear, vulnerability, and unexpected courage. Many articles emphasized the human aspect, the young woman's relief, the passengers' reactions, and the quiet confidence of the person who stepped in. It became a story not just of danger avoided, but of humanity at its best. For the young woman, the attention was overwhelming at first. She had not expected to become part of a widely shared story, yet the support and admiration helped her process the experience. Friends, family, and even strangers reached out, sharing words of encouragement and empathy. The young woman realized that while the incident had been frightening, it had also revealed something profound about human connection and the willingness of strangers to act for the safety of another. She began to understand that fear could be met with courage, and that courage could inspire hope in ways that seemed almost magical. The passengers who had witnessed the attack also began to reflect on the experience. Some spoke of their initial hesitation, the moments when fear had frozen them in place. Others described the relief and awe they felt when they realized someone had stepped in to take control. Conversations in workplaces, homes, and social circles revolved around what they had seen. People discussed how ordinary life could suddenly be interrupted by danger, and how the difference between harm and safety often came down to one person's willingness to act. Dwayne Johnson, though a public figure, remained focused on the human aspect of the event. He did not seek recognition or media attention, instead offering quiet support and advice to the authorities and to the young woman. His priority was ensuring that the young woman felt safe and supported, and that the attacker was handled appropriately. Behind the scenes, he worked with law enforcement to clarify details and provide observations about the attacker's behavior. His input helped the authorities understand the situation more fully, and it reinforced the idea that courage is not just physical strength, but also awareness and moral responsibility. The young woman, gradually regaining a sense of normalcy, began to process her emotions with the help of family and friends. She spoke about the fear she had felt, and how quickly it had turned into relief once the intervention occurred. She expressed her gratitude not only for the person who stepped in, but also for the collective response of the passengers who had remained calm enough to allow the situation to resolve safely. These conversations helped her regain confidence in navigating public spaces, and reminded her that even in moments of vulnerability, human compassion can emerge in powerful ways. As the story continued to spread online, discussions emerged about the importance of situational awareness and preparedness in public spaces. Experts and commentators highlighted how quick thinking and decisive action could prevent harm, and how ordinary people could make a difference when they noticed danger. The incident became a case study in courage, illustrating that fear can be met with action, and that even in the most mundane settings, extraordinary acts are possible. The young woman also shared her experience in more personal ways. Speaking to close friends and communities about what had happened, she emphasized the human elements, the fear, the relief, and the courage that had emerged. Her narrative highlighted not only the danger, but also the strength of character displayed in the moments of crisis. She explained how seeing someone act decisively had transformed her fear into a sense of safety, and how witnessing courage had changed her perception of what people are capable of in moments of need. For the passengers, the incident became a shared memory that brought them closer, even if only briefly, strangers who had never sepia. Oken before had witnessed a rare act of heroism together. Some kept in touch online, reflecting on how extraordinary the moment had been. Their discussions were filled with a mix of awe and humility, recognizing how close they had been to a dangerous situation and how quickly courage had turned the tide. The young woman in particular appreciated the shared empathy, understanding that collective human awareness and concern can create a safer environment for everyone. Meanwhile, the attacker faced the legal consequences of his actions. The judicial process became a point of reflection for the young woman and those who had witnessed the incident. It reinforced the idea that justice is a process, but that immediate action in the moment can prevent irreversible harm. Observing the consequences of the attacker's actions further underscored the importance of moral courage and personal responsibility. It reminded the young woman and the passengers that standing up in moments of crisis is not just heroic, but also impactful in the long-term sense. The story of the subway attack also inspired broader conversations about public safety and personal responsibility. People began to talk more openly about being aware of their surroundings, supporting one another and acting when necessary. It highlighted the value of community, even among strangers, and the power of a single act of courage to change outcomes for the better. The young woman, through sharing her experience, became a subtle advocate for awareness and bravery, helping others reflect on what they might do in similar situations. For the young woman, the impact of the incident was not just about fear or relief. It was also about personal growth. She realized that she had faced a genuine threat and had survived it, and that witnessing courage could inspire confidence and resilience. She began to carry herself differently, more aware of her surroundings but also more trusting of the goodness that can exist in people. Her perspective shifted from one of vulnerability to one of cautious empowerment. The passengers who witnessed the event also carried lessons with them. They reflected on their own reactions, recognizing that hesitation is natural in moments of danger, but that stepping aside to allow intervention can make a critical difference. They shared these insights with friends and family, encouraging discussions about bravery, empathy, and responsibility. The incident became a story not only of fear and danger, but also of inspiration and hope. As days passed, the young woman continued to process the events. She remembered the exact moment the intervention occurred, the calm presence, the unwavering attention, and the way the attacker's plan collapsed in seconds. It was a memory that reminded her that human courage can emerge when least expected, and that ordinary life can contain moments of extraordinary significance. She carried this awareness into her daily routine, feeling more prepared and more confident in navigating the world around her. The story of the subway attack and the intervention also resonated beyond those directly involved. Friends of passengers, family members, and colleagues heard the account and were inspired. Conversations about courage, human connection, and moral responsibility became more common. People discussed how quickly a situation could escalate and how valuable it is to remain alert, supportive, and ready to act. The incident became a touchstone for discussions about heroism in everyday life. The young woman, with support from her loved ones, began to see the incident as a turning point. She recognized that fear had been intense, but that it had been met with immediate action, compassion, and protection. She understood that moments of crisis can reveal both vulnerability and strength, and that witnessing courage can leave a lasting impression on those who experience it. The subway ride, once an ordinary part of her day, had become a defining moment that shaped her understanding of human character. Weeks after the subway incident, the young woman began to feel a mixture of emotions that she hadn't expected. The fear she had experienced was still present in her mind, but it was balanced by gratitude and reflection. She thought often about how quickly the situation had changed, and how someone had stepped in to protect her without hesitation. The memory of the calm authority that had intervened stayed with her, reminding her that in moments of danger, courage can appear suddenly and change everything. She shared her experience with close friends and family, describing the intensity of the attack and the relief she felt when it was stopped. She spoke about the fear, the shaking hands, the rapid heartbeat, and then the sudden sense of safety that had emerged. Her stories were emotional but also inspiring. She wanted others to understand that while danger can arise unexpectedly, there are people in the world willing to step in and make a difference. Her accounts emphasized the human element, the calm, decisive intervention that had prevented harm and restored safety. Dwayne Johnson, in the meantime, remained quietly supportive behind the scenes. He did not seek attention or praise, but he continued to check in to make sure the young woman was safe and had access to any help she might need. He also worked with authorities, providing details about what he observed during the incident. His focus was on ensuring justice was served and that the young woman had support in the aftermath. He reinforced the idea that courage is not about recognition. It is about taking responsibility and acting in the moment to protect others. The attacker faced legal proceedings, and the judicial process became a point of reflection for many who had witnessed or learned about the incident. It was clear that immediate action could prevent irreversible harm, but the law was necessary to address the consequences. The young woman followed the updates closely, understanding that the legal system would provide a formal resolution to the situation. She felt a sense of closure knowing that the person who had attempted to harm her would face accountability. Meanwhile, the passengers who had witnessed the event continued to reflect on what had happened. They spoke about their own reactions during the moments of fear and chaos. Some admitted that they had frozen, unsure what to do, while others had instinctively stepped back, allowing the intervention to succeed. These reflections highlighted the importance of awareness and readiness in public spaces. People began discussing the value of moral courage and how small actions like staying calm or creating space could contribute to the safety of others. The young woman also began to notice changes within herself. She became more aware of her surroundings and more confident in handling unexpected situations. The memory of being protected and supported reinforced her belief in human goodness and courage. She carried herself differently, not with fear, but with a sense of empowerment that came from having survived a threatening situation and witnessed extraordinary bravery firsthand. The subway ride, once a mundane part of her daily routine, had become a defining moment in her personal growth. As news of the incident spread online, people expressed admiration for the courage displayed. Stories, social media posts, and videos captured glimpses of the intervention. People discussed the bravery of the individual who had stepped in, emphasizing that such courage could exist in anyone, not just those in positions of fame or authority. The young woman was deeply touched by the overwhelming support and encouragement from strangers who had been moved by the story. It reminded her that human compassion can reach far beyond immediate circumstances. The young woman also became a subtle advocate for awareness and courage. She shared lessons from her experience, emphasizing that while fear is natural, acting with courage and supporting one another can make a difference. She encouraged others to remain vigilant, to support those in need, and to understand that ordinary people have the power to prevent harm through decisive action. Her message was simple but powerful. Human empathy and courage can save lives and inspire hope. Passengers who had witnessed the attack began to share their reflections more widely. They spoke about the extraordinary experience of seeing fear transformed into safety by someone's quick, calm, and decisive action. They recognized that ordinary people often underestimate their own capacity for impact, but the incident had shown that courage can manifest in unexpected ways. These reflections were shared in conversations, online discussions, and community meetings, reinforcing the idea that one person's action can create ripple effects that influence many others. The young woman's family also played a key role in her recovery. They provided comfort, reassurance, and understanding as she processed the emotional aftermath. Through their support, she was able to discuss her fears openly, recognize the bravery she had witnessed, and appreciate the collective efforts that had contributed to her safety. Family conversations highlighted not only the immediate intervention, but also the broader lessons of empathy, vigilance, and moral responsibility. As weeks passed, the young woman began to integrate the experience into her daily life. She continued her routines, but with a heightened awareness and appreciation for the value of courage and kindness in others. The memory of being protected on the subway reminded her that ordinary people can create extraordinary outcomes when they act selflessly. It also strengthened her belief in community, that even in the midst of fear or danger, collective awareness and support can make public spaces safer for everyone. Dwayne Johnson remained a quiet presence in the background, offering support without seeking attention. He emphasized that courage is not about fame or recognition. It is about doing the right thing when it matters most. His actions reinforce the idea that ordinary people, guided by empathy and moral responsibility, can make a profound difference. This lesson resonated not only with the young woman, but also with the passengers and the wider audience who learned about the incident. The subway attack became a symbol of how fear can be met with courage. It inspired discussions about safety, empathy, and personal responsibility. People reflected on the power of decisive action and moral courage, recognizing that these qualities can emerge even in the most ordinary settings. The young woman, through sharing her story and her reflections, helped others understand that bravery is accessible to anyone willing to act. For the young woman, the experience transformed her understanding of fear and courage. She realized that fear is natural and unavoidable in threatening situations, but courage can change outcomes. She learned that human connection and moral responsibility matter, and that empathy and support can provide safety and hope. Her perspective on public spaces shifted, seeing them not just as places of routine but also as arenas where courage and human kindness can manifest unexpectedly. The passengers continued to reflect on the lessons they had learned. They shared stories with friends, family, and colleagues about the importance of awareness, vigilance, and readiness to act. The intervention had demonstrated the impact of human courage, showing that one person's actions can prevent harm and inspire others. This realization encouraged a broader sense of responsibility among those who had witnessed the event. The young woman's confidence gradually returned as she integrated the lessons from the incident into her life. She approached public spaces with a renewed sense of awareness but not fear. Instead, she felt empowered by the knowledge that courage can emerge in critical moments, and that ordinary people have the capacity to make extraordinary differences. The subway ride, once mundane, had become a defining experience that shaped her understanding of human behavior, empathy, and moral responsibility. In her reflections, the young woman often thought about the calm, decisive presence that had intervened on the subway. The memory of that courage became a source of strength, guiding her reactions and thoughts in daily life. It reminded her that human courage can emerge when needed most, and that acts of kindness and protection have lasting impacts on those who witness them. The incident had left an indelible mark, shaping her outlook and inspiring a sense of hope and empowerment. Passengers who had observed the event carried their own lessons and reflections. They shared the story as a testament to human bravery and moral responsibility, emphasizing that extraordinary acts can occur in ordinary circumstances. The incident became a point of conversation, reflection, and inspiration, demonstrating that courage, empathy, and decisive action can transform fear into safety and chaos into calm. The young woman's journey of processing the incident continued over the weeks. She reflected on the fear, the relief, and the courage she had witnessed. She appreciated the strength and decisiveness of the individual who had intervened, and the collective awareness of the passengers that had allowed the intervention to succeed. Through these reflections, she found a deeper understanding of human behavior, resilience, and the importance of stepping forward in moments of crisis. Ultimately, the subway attack and its aftermath became a story of courage, empathy, and human connection. The young woman, the passengers, and the wider community who learned about the incident were reminded that even in the most ordinary moments, extraordinary acts of bravery are possible. Fear can be met with courage, chaos can be met with calm, and ordinary people can make a lasting impact when they act selflessly and decisively. The passengers, the young woman, and even the authorities involved all shared a common realization. Ordinary people are capable of extraordinary acts. In moments of danger, one person's willingness to act can save lives and inspire others. The story of the subway attack, widely shared and discussed, became a symbol of what humanity can achieve when fear is met with courage. It highlighted the importance of moral responsibility, the impact of quick thinking, and the power of empathy and support in public spaces. For the young woman, reflecting on the experience became part of her healing process. She focused not only on the fear she had felt, but also on the bravery she had witnessed. The memory of that calm, decisive presence became a source of strength, reminding her that even in the darkest moments, human courage and kindness can prevail. She carried this lesson with her, not just in her daily commutes but in her broader outlook on life and interactions with others. The passengers, too, continued to share their reflections. They recognized the rarity of such a clear and effective intervention and the importance of remaining observant and supportive in public spaces. The story of the subway attack served as both a cautionary tale and a source of inspiration. It demonstrated the unpredictable nature of life, but also the profound difference that one person's courage can make in a critical moment. Through conversations, media coverage, and personal reflection, the young woman and the passengers began to see the larger significance of the event. It was not just about fear or danger. It was about the human capacity for empathy, courage, and moral action. The incident became a shared story of resilience and hope, highlighting that even in ordinary circumstances, Extraordinary acts can occur when someone chooses to stand up for what is right. The young woman, the passengers, and everyone who heard the story were reminded that human courage can manifest in powerful and lasting ways, leaving an impression that extends far beyond the immediate moment. Meething, extraordinary. The story of the intervention would spread beyond the subway car, but in that moment it was personal and immediate. The young woman, still holding her bag tightly, felt a sense of gratitude that went beyond words. She had been vulnerable, frightened, and alone in a public space, and yet she had been protected by someone willing to act decisively and compassionately. For the passengers, the lesson was clear. Even in everyday life, extraordinary acts of bravery are possible when someone refuses to stand by and do nothing. By the time the train reached the next station, the situation was fully under control. The attacker had been removed, and the young woman had regained her composure enough to continue her journey. Passengers began to step off the train, sharing quiet reflections on what had occurred. The young woman offered a final nod of thanks to Dwayne, who acknowledged her silently and ensured she was safe before stepping back into the crowd. The subway car, once a scene of fear, had returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the impact of the intervention remained, a reminder of the power of courage, calm, and humanity in moments of crisis. The attacker remained subdued and under control. Subway security moved in quickly, guided by the calm but firm presence of Dwayne Johnson. The young woman, though still shaken, felt a sense of relief that she hadn't imagined, a recognition that human courage had intervened at precisely the right moment. The passengers who had witnessed the event quietly began to discuss what had happened, their voices filled with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. The subway ride, which had begun as an ordinary journey, had transformed into a moment that no one in the car would forget. The young woman's fear had been real, intense, and immediate, but it had been met with a response that was just as powerful and reassuring. In the midst of ordinary life, in a place where people normally remain strangers to each other, an extraordinary act of courage had taken place. The attacker had not seen it coming, and his plan had been completely dismantled in seconds. As the doors closed and the train began to move again, passengers exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the rare experience they had shared. The young woman, now able to breathe more easily, looked around at the faces of those who had witnessed the event. Everyone seemed to carry a mix of emotions: relief, awe, and a subtle sense of hope. Ordinary life, with its usual routines and unpredictabilities, had been interrupted by an extraordinary moment of human courage. The story of the subway attack and how it was stopped had begun. But in that moment, there was no need for retelling or media attention. The human impact was immediate and undeniable. A stranger had stepped in and prevented harm. Fear had been replaced by safety. Chaos had been replaced by calm. And the ordinary people in that subway car had been given a rare glimpse of what it looks like when courage and action collide perfectly. Dwayne Johnson remained a quiet, steady presence until the situation was fully under control. His actions had prevented an unimaginable outcome, and his calm authority had given everyone a sense of security. The young woman, now standing a little, taller and breathing a little easier, realized the importance of having someone willing to act in the face of danger, and for the passengers who had witnessed it, the experience would remain with them forever. A story of courage, humanity, and unexpected heroism in the middle of an ordinary subway ride.